So I'm submitting another verbal submission now because I'm actually getting quite annoyed with this government and how the way they're doing things is not honest. The whole time the government trying to make out that it's honest and it's got our best interests at heart and it's kind of like, it cares about the community. It wants crime and justice to be better so people can get fair trials and access justice. They couldn't be more misleading. They're absolute compulsive liars. There's no justice for elections because no one can afford the £5,000 election fee, right? They've substituted and taken over governance of it really with the Electoral Commission, who are not and have not been enforcing it, right? And now they're taking over with this social media model, which is against the actual legislation for elections, and no one even really knows what the law was before or is now, unless you read upon it, right? Now, my last submission kind of focused on Tony Blair and the foreign influences on these ID cards, right? Now, there is some socio-cultural issues with it, socio-cultural effects and socio-cultural strategy behind this digital ID card, right? Now, the reason that I've started recording again and I'm submitting a second verbal audio submission is for this reason. And it is because I've just seen someone in one of the groups, one of the chat groups, messenger chat groups to do with the Great British National Strike, talk about child voting for children under 16, right? Under 18, 16. I just searched on the internet and it says that unless whatever websites are coming up in the first page of results in 2024, it's saying that it's still 18. But someone in one of the groups have just said that their child who is 16 has received a notice from the local council, right, threatening them that if they do not register to vote, they're actually going to get fined. Right, so it's making it. And I don't know how accurate that report is, but this is what someone has claimed. Right, they've claimed this, whether they read the letter properly or not. Now, I actually said quite a bit about this, and it's important for digital ID because this is tied into digital ID and the way the government want to go with it. Right, so. The government called off the local elections. They didn't want people to go out and vote in the local areas. They called it off because we're going to lose, right? Which is, there's no sportsmanship in that, right? But yet, the Electoral Commission were putting out adverts and information saying, oh, we need strategies to encourage people to vote. How can we get people to vote, right? But yet, the Electoral Commission can't say, oh, we need to try and get people to vote, right? How are we going to do that? But yet, the government called off the local elections and they didn't want people to vote. So what's going on there? More like, we wanted people to vote once we figured out a strategy how we can win, right? When we've cheated, taking the vote away from them and try and maybe coerce some kids to vote for us, right? So, this is the thing. When I've never been in trouble with the police, right? When I was growing up and I went to school, high school, right, as a kid, right? I didn't have anything to do with the police, other than you learn in school, a fireman wears a fireman helmet, a judge wears a wig, and a policeman dresses in a police uniform, right? I didn't have anything to do with the police. Maybe I was lucky, right? Maybe I got brought up in a normal family, that doesn't have anything to do with the police, right? Now, obviously, I know what a police officer is, obviously, and I'd seen them, obviously, but I didn't have anything to do with the police. Why would I have anything to do with the police, right? When you grow up as a normal person, right? Now, when I got my driving license, things changed. Now, I got a job driving, and obviously being a normal person, right, then I discovered there were these things called fines, right? If a traffic light thing goes off, which I never even went through a red traffic light, but I got a letter through claiming that I had, right? And you get this thing called a fine. Oh, what's this? What is it? I don't even know what it is, right? Oh, it says I've been a naughty boy and I've done something wrong. Welcome to the world of fines. And then for the rest of your life and forever and ever, you've been inducted into His Majesty's government of Big Brother is watching. Now you have passed the age. Now you have been inducted. It's almost like on the Lost Boys, when you drink the wine or eat the Chinese food, and get turned into a vampire. Now you're old enough to face the King's justice. We'll teach you a lesson. Now we'll induct you into some... But I don't have anything to do with the police. I don't have anything to do with the police. Why would I be getting letters from the police, right? Oh, because now we bred you up, and now we can start giving you some fines now you're old enough, right? This is the thing. And this is exactly what the first thing I thought when someone said, "Oh, now if we lower the voting age to 16, right? Then we can start fining. Now this is we've opened up a whole new world of fines. Never mind that you're not accountable to the law. If you're under 10-year-old or whatever." You better to get them when they're, now we're getting them open to His Majesty's government, His Majesty's, the Royal Signs Manual, right? Now, old enough to breed, old enough to feed, right? And then now get them inducted into His Majesty's authority. Why would I have any reason to be facing His Majesty's authority, right? I'm a good boy. I don't have anything to do with the police. Well, now you do. If you don't fill this form in, we're going to find, but I haven't done anything wrong. I'm going about normal life, right? Never mind getting a driving license, passing it first time, and going out into the world, right? What's this? A fine? But nothing happened. I didn't do anything. Well, apparently you went through a traffic light. I went to school, came home, went to bed, got up, went to school, right? Came home, did my homework, watched TV, went to bed. Right, got up, went to school, came home. A letter comes through the door. You've been fined. Welcome to His Majesty's government. Right, old enough to be fined now, but I haven't done anything wrong. Well, you'll soon get the idea of obedience when you're young. And we know you haven't done anything wrong, but you won't ever be doing anything wrong now when you learn discipline. But I haven't done anything wrong. Now, this is it, right? What are this government doing? What are they actually doing with these fines for not registering to vote? Now, it's clearly obvious that they want to get them on to voting digitally, right? And they want to tie it in with the smartphones. And in my previous talk, I talked about the mobile phone is the digital ID, and as soon as they pass the digital ID law, then they'll be allowed to call the phone the digital ID because they've already given us it and made everyone have it, right? And now they're in to get younger people to vote. Now, this is the thing, right, with this younger voting, and this is important, right? Children have a brain, and it is not finished growing, and in size, you can measure this by the size of the skull, right? Even the head hasn't grown that big. It's not a complete brain until it's fully grown, right? And as it's growing, they're actually studying and learning about life in the world, right? Now, this is the thing. There are a lot of distractions when you are a teenager growing up because you do this thing called puberty. It's called puberty because you don't know what sex and sexual things are until you are sexually activated, because you don't have a sex feeling or function until it's finished growing, right? But when it does, then you've got this thing called puberty, and you're interested in opposite sex, right? And, peer issues, social issues in groups, in schools, in playgrounds, and you're focused on the playground, what people are doing, what people are saying, who people are friends. It's a social knowledge that you're learning. You're learning about sociology because you're engaged, you're immersed in sociology, right? Now, you're also learning subjects because you've been taught mathematics, history, English, all these subjects, possibly even law or whatever, right? Because you don't know the subjects, so you've got to learn them, right? Now, this is the thing. I'm all for diversity and inclusion, and, for disabled people with disabilities being able to achieve, get into the House of Lords or whatever and things like that. But not when they're taking over the place, right? Now, would you have a 12-year-old teaching a class at school as the teacher? No. Would you have a 16-year-old as a headmaster of a school? No. Why not? Because they haven't finished learning yet, right? They haven't completed learning. And also their brain hasn't grown to encompass mentally in their mind and hold in their imagination and thoughts the entire world. And and you could say, well, they could read Encyclopedia Britannica, or they might have been on a holiday. Whenever they go on a holiday, right, they've got a consciousness aura perimeter, right? And they might have been to loads of places in the world, but while they were at those places, right, they might have only been interacting with certain people or certain things, right, or remember certain things, right? You don't have a attention focus really on the. I mean, even Greta Thunberg, right, who's meant to be a global activist, right, and she's met Arnold Schwarzenegger and she's doing all these stunts and things. We're seeing that on TV. We're seeing her do it, but she's still with these groups of people, and she's still at that age where you can see she's growing up, right? And she might like activism and want to save the planet, but she hasn't finished growing yet. And the actual mind which holds the information hasn't completed growing. The tree branches aren't at the physical points in space around the tree until they reach there, even though it looks like all the other trees, and it clearly is a tree, right, and a certain type of tree. It hasn't finished actually growing yet. Now, this kind of new sort of like inclusion and diversity model, this kind of new sort of like, you know, include everyone no matter what age they are and so forth, is the reason why the current government is actually dysfunctional and not working. Now, you might say that, you know, government standards, right? I've got this book in front of me. I've got a book by the government in 2012 on parliamentary privilege. The 2012 report on parliamentary privilege. I think it was Bernard Jennings MP who was involved in it, and actually one of the House of Lords speakers, one of the ones who fills in when the main speaker's not there, right? She was on this committee. Now, this book, right, is an example of what we're dealing with. This book on parliamentary privilege in 2012, issued by this government, in the opening pages, claims that it is at the highest possible standard that you can be in the world, right? It isn't. It's never seen the highest possible standard you can be in the world. I've been leaving answer phone messages with Bernard as I've been reading this book, right? Because the whole way through it is erroneous, misleading, and deceptive, and it omits 5 Parliamentary Privileges Acts which exist, which are critically important, which have been completely ignored, at least so far as I've got up to chapter 6, and I looked through the rest of the book at the bottom of the page at the citations, and they weren't there, right? So I'm expecting them not to be in it at all, right? Now, this we've got our finger exactly on the issue. This is misleading. Now, it's not that the MPs who did it are stupid and retarded. They are purposely not including all the information in it because they don't want us to know it, right? And they are dabbling in it, right? And when it's like in Karate Kid when he says, you know, Daniel's son, either, you know, walk on the left side of the road or walk on the right side of the road. But if you walk in the middle of it, you get splattered like a grape. Now, these MPs are meddling, trifling, dangerously with a very serious, important role in Parliament, with the privileges of Parliament and the country, and they're dabbling in the middle of the road, but they're making out it's to the highest standard and they're very serious, but they don't want to go to one side of the road where it's absolutely thorough, complete, precise and true, right? Or the other side where they, you know, it's like, oh, when did the Petitions Committee meet last? Well, it meets 4 times a year. How long for? Oh, about a minute. 1 minute. Right? And oh, by the way, in the 1972-1973 report, it says, the Petitions Committee is a complete waste of time. It's like a charade. We don't know why we bother doing it, right? That's the other side of the road. Now, what they're doing is they're taking the absolute mick out of us in this government, right? They're not fit, capable, or competent to be elected into the government in these positions. They're not fit to serve this country, right? But yet now, right, they're obstructing and blocking petitions from e-petitions saying, no, it's not to our standards, it's not up to standards, it's not up to standards. The MPs aren't up to standards. They aren't up to standards. Yet they're going on diversity and inclusion. Diversity and inclusion. We accept all languages. Diversity and inclusion. No, you're not. You're blocking people because you're saying they're not up to standards. That's not diversity and inclusion. Does it appeal to poor people? Does it appeal to people with, a wry sense of humour? That's diversity and inclusion. What type of people do these public petitions, meant to appeal to? And then it's saying, this parliamentary privileges assessment is in the interest of the public. And privileges should always be in the interest of the public. Well, it's in the interest of the public when you collect the 3 million signatures and put it on the table and say, look, that's evidence that it's in the public interest because 3 million members of the public signed it, right? But no, we're not going to allow you to run it, right? Because we don't think it's up to standards, so you're not going to get a chance to prove that it's in the public interest to make us do what you say, because it's up to standards. When actually, there's nothing but lies and deception coming out of the Petitions Committee, right? Because they're making up ridiculous rules which aren't in the standing orders, which aren't in the law, which aren't anywhere, but in a figment policy which cannot be lawful, right? And then there's Jacob Rees-Mogg going, maybe we should take everyone's rights away because, we can't have them, putting scandalous defamatory things out there, can we? But, we need to restrict this right. But the right is there to facilitate a process. I'm not going to be able to facilitate the process and perform the functions if you reduce it, right? So when we're getting on to this ID card issue, right, this is what we're dealing with. And this is what is happening when it comes to these children, right, with the voting. Hey, let's let children vote. It's diversity and inclusion. But if they don't turn up and vote, then we're going to fine them. So we're actually forcing them to vote. But isn't that trying to affect the vote? Because in the law, if you coerce or try and affect someone to vote or not to vote, that is actually a criminal offence, right? Because to entice someone to vote if they didn't want to vote or if they didn't support the government, right, that's actually affecting someone's decision in an election. Not only who to vote for, but whether they should or should not vote. So if they are issuing these fines out, that's illegal and criminal. Now, I think that they're forcing the kids to vote. I probably wouldn't have wanted to vote when I was younger, and if I did, it would all have been about me and my life, I should be able to do this, I should be able to do that. It definitely wouldn't be about thinking about other people or as much, even though that I did care about other people a lot and what happened to other people. But in the grand scheme of things, in the grand scheme of the country, particularly when you're filling in consultations about privileges and all kinds of things you're going to be asking them to do and complete, right? It's what it's doing, I think, is it's saying, let's put the children in charge of the classroom, right? Why don't the children teach the kids? Now, it's true. It's true that sometimes you do a presentation in the classroom, all right? You say, I'll do a talk. Right, okay, I'll do a talk on my hobby. But a talk is a talk, right? A talk is teaching you how to do a presentation. A talk is letting you have a little go so you can, do it. Now, they were doing this with the Youth's Parliament, and they were even inviting the other British territories, from around the world to come to it, right? Now, the problem is this. knowing that this government is putting out things like the Parliamentary Privilege Report 2012, which is lies and scandalous, right? Even the MPs can't even defend themselves. Look at this MP who headbutted someone in the bar, the guy who looks like Sharp, right? From Scotland. Now, he didn't even use the Parliamentary Privileges Acts to protect him from arrest. No, it's not about whether he should or shouldn't have done it or not. This completely and totally ignores 5 acts of law, starting with Strude's Act, 5 Parliamentary Privileges Acts. He hasn't mentioned any of them yet so far at all, right? Same with Mike Amesbury, same with Dan Norris, and same with Patrick Spence, right? That's the police acting unlawfully. So we've just got incompetence the whole time, and now they're inviting children when when they can't educate themselves properly, and then when they're misleading the public with reports, now they want to bring children into it. Now they want to bring children in, and children are a lot easier to mislead, right? Children are easier to deceive and mislead. And my feelings on it is with the mobile phone as the digital ID card, which it already is, and they've already got kids to have mobile phones, right? And now they've introduced this new, filtering out all adult stuff, even though every house and hub has got it filtered out. How many filters do you need? There's a filter on the home, there's a filter on your phone, How many different filters do you need? This is the blockchain model which has been forced in, which means basically every it's like David Beckham when he had every single house and his door locked, right? David Beckham had this thing where he wants to lock every single house and every single door in his house because he's paranoid about people coming in there. There's like 5 doors locked, right? When is this government satisfied? BT hubs have already got adult controls on. When a parent buys a kid a phone, before they give them the phone, they set it up and they put the adult settings on the phone. Not only are they on the phone now, not only are they through BT on the hub in the house, but now they're making our websites have them on, right? So literally, you can't do anything or go anywhere. Now, I have had enough of this slavery. Modern slavery. They're throwing these modern slavery terms around at the bottom of sheets of paper in small print, all these companies, like, that's the con, right? Patrick Spence, Dan Norris, Mike Amesbury are victims of modern slavery. First get the MPs under slavery, strip their rights away, lie to them about their rights, when even MPs who are elected don't know what their rights are. And then the Privileges Committee are putting false information out about their rights, right? And now you're wanting children to come into the picture and vote when they haven't even finished learning at school and when they're distracted by puberty and hormones. Tony Blair and this digital ID culture want absolute dumb. They want a dumb country. And it's so insulting. How dare the Petitions Committee say to me about standards? They wouldn't know what standards were if they were in a maths room full of maths professors, right? They're lying. I know what the standards of petitioning are when I'm reading petitions all through history telling us that we can remove evil and corrupt ministers by petition, yet we're not being allowed to run them because they're protecting themselves by false standards, fake standards, because they don't want people who know what they're doing to win and beat them. And now, after calling off elections and then trying to say they want to encourage people to vote, now bringing children in and introducing new levels of fines, which makes parking fines and traffic light fines look like small play. Now they're even fining people just for not actually doing anything wrong because they won't turn up and vote, which is scandalous and preying on children. And what they're going to do this is what they're going to do. They're going to use boy bands, right? They're going to use boy bands and pop culture that all their big corporate buddies and businesses and Black Rock Vanguard and all the music artists and labels have already rigged to put in the charts, all the commercial radio stations, YouTube, Facebook, all the algorithms and all the adverts popping up on phones. And when these children who are not that experienced in life and haven't finished an education program and even come out the other side of it, right? And when they've all got their growing up excitements and distractions in life, they're going to use celebrities, Gary Barlow, Robbie Williams, people like that, the Spice Girls, things like that, to influence and manipulate their political opinion while they are young and vulnerable as children, because that's what their favourite pop star or heartthrob votes for and supports. Similarly to how Greta Thunberg, being young and impressionable, has latched onto the environment cause and issue, they're going to do the same, but for the opposition and for the other side, which has got a lot more financial industrial money behind it, a lot more psychological study, and by the way, psychological study which is being misused, abused, and ill-informed, similarly to how this 2012 privileges paper is, right, which is irresponsible use of psychology, irresponsible use of money to influence impressionable, vulnerable children politically, because the current Labour Party is being thrashed and losing. And people do not want facial recognition, digital IDs, being spied on, and block, locks on everything. Every single thing. What isn't there going to be a lock on, right? We don't have to accept it or put up with it. This diversity and inclusion is not about race and religion. It's about a McDonald's-styled assimilation of religion, assimilation of culture. It's not diversity and inclusion like, let's invite loads of people in from different religions and all get along together. It is what McDonald's is doing is destroying religions and cultures, and it's the industrial military complex. It is wear the uniform, wear the McDonald's suit, wear what the heartthrobs and boy bands are wearing, listen to their music and vote the way that they're voting. That is Tony Blair's master plan. That is the way this government is going in. And where, it might as well be, ships turning up in Australia on the beach and taking over the entire country and nation with their technology, whether the Aboriginals like it or not. That's not diversity and inclusion. That is, hello there, we're coming to take over, whether you like it or not. And, we're going to, if you don't sell your land, we're going to buy it off you. And, we're in charge now, right? And that is what these tech people are doing. This is what Elon Musk, Donald Trump, Putin, Mark Zuckerberg, Sergey Brin, Jeff Bezos, all these people are doing to us as if we were Aboriginals, because we don't have their technology now. Only very few people have got their technology. And, any college or university graduate who doesn't become affiliated with them and vote for their party is clearly going to get fined. Never mind whether they vote for their party or not. They're fining them if they don't register, right? They're fining them if they don't register. I am not going to accept this. I am not accepting this, right? No elected MP in this country, right, who comes out with anything like this 2012 privileges book, right, is fit to vote in the House of Commons. I condemn every single MP in this Parliament. I don't care who voted for them, right? And if they stop blocking us with that fake standards of petitions committee, I will show them the public interest. I will show them the votes. I will get more votes than they got to get into Parliament, which is why they're not letting us run the petition, because they don't want us to get the public opinion. Not from people who know actually what they're talking about or doing, or whether it appeals to anyone in a diverse culture with diverse appeal to poor people or people with wry wit or humour or in different languages, as so the Scottish Parliament accept any language, even the language of a Liverpudlian, even the language of a working class Liverpudlian with a bad attitude. Apparently in William Prynne, in John Pym, it says that even people with bad attitudes have a right to vote, right? If they get elected to Parliament, even if they've got a bad attitude. So get that through your Standards Committee, right? We're being infiltrated by a government which thinks it's claiming that it's got diversity and inclusion when their purpose is to create a new public order with all different people in it, but who all conform to this standards, what they call, but the standards aren't diversity and inclusion. The standards are exclusion. How many petitions have been rejected by the Petitioners Committee? Exclusion, 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 exclusion. It's not diversity and inclusion, it's exclusion. And, you know, you don't even have the chance to be excluded now. Apparently they're sending fines out to kids. I am opposed to this digital ID, right? If we do not get a referendum on this and a referendum on whether kids should be able to vote, right? I want to see the end of, and I actually like Parliament. I prefer the House of Commons to the Senate or to the Scottish Parliament or to these European models with these strange Bond villain rooms with these computers sat round, right? Just like the Crown Prosecution Service computers, which haven't even been sending all the case files to judges who've been malfunctioning. Something strange has been going on there, right? I like Parliament, but I've actually had enough of Parliament now, because we need referendums. They should be in there to represent the people and not this political party control. We need to end political parties, because actually, you know, it probably won't be as bad if children voted if they weren't being coerced to vote for this kind of football team, Manchester United versus Arsenal style structure. If it was like, who is the person who's standing? You know, who is the person, right? What type of person are they? Are they fit for purpose? Are they fit to do a Privileges Committee report? You know? And if they don't get up to standard, but the thing is, the media is now controlling the whole thing, the public attitude, because they've got, like with Nigel Farage. Farage is a criminal, right? It doesn't matter whether I agree with Reform UK's policies. It doesn't matter whether I like the ideas that you Reform UK come out with, right? Farage used talking pints to promote his profile, boost his popularity, invited conservative people on like Priti Patel and football managers to convert them to reform from the Tories, and then he went and got a seat in Parliament and won, because he got that. It wasn't notional spending, it wasn't implied spending. He pretended that it didn't affect the outcome of his election at all whatsoever. No, GB News didn't help me with my votes or the party, you liar, right? It did. So, but now all the media are backing him up. The media is making these gurus now. And it's all about who's going to step up to it, who's up to the podium, You know, and there's Starmer going, no, I'm dead hard, I'm hard, I can take it. Well, you know, I don't care how hard you are, you're a liar, right? You're a criminal. You went through the whole CPS in your whole career and completely and totally ignored the privileges of political activists who are doing causes to Parliament. You're a criminal man, right? You are a criminal man. Right? That is a fact. And if he wants to prove he's not, then go and try. He doesn't even want the accusation. These people won't even face the accusation, because if the accusation gets out, they know they've lost, because that's a fact and truth. So these people, they cannot even have anyone know the truth anymore. And this is why Parliament's a charade. You know, there is no free speech in Parliament, because if they spoke freely, right, then the public would be in uproar, just for them speaking freely, let alone if they wanted to defame someone or, say something provocative. The truth is now a danger to Parliament. Going into Parliament and speaking the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth thoroughly, which is what freedom of speech is for, is too dangerous for MPs. Their party will lose, right? So they cannot speak freely in Parliament ever since it started being put on the radio and broadcast. They have to not tell the truth, right? And without even, you don't have to be defamatory or with malice to just tell the full truth. But because the public now, when the government, if they do tell the truth, the government go berserk, right? Mad. That means that that's not even being purposely defamatory or any other thing. It just means that being normal and telling the truth, we can't do that. So now we've got to play everything down, not answer questions. So what you actually got, unless Parliament meet in secret, is a dysfunctional body, mainly because of the media and the newspapers, and every single thing they're doing is being promoted, advertised and scrutinised, and there's an immediate response and reaction. And they're blocking that off of the Petitions Committee, with their claim standards. So what it's become is when you get the guitar and go close to a speaker and you get that feedback noise, that loud screeching sound. And that's what happens now, because all the media and the TV and the radio have got their eyes on Parliament, not just people in the gallery or whatever, and it's in Parliament's face, right? So if Parliament plays the tune, plays a high note, right, without even intending to, play a nasty song, the feedback is too noisy and loud, right? And it causes a strange effect, which means that it can't work properly now, it can't function, right? That's what's effectively happening. So now Keir Starmer can't answer any questions, he can't tell the truth, it's got to be evasive, right? But we know that he's a criminal anyway, because the Crown Prosecution Service won't disclose information when they're meant to. Why aren't you disclosing this? Why aren't you disclosing that? If there's a packet of cheese and onion crisps, right, and I tell the CPS, disclose the packet of crisps, and it's got nothing to do with the case, it can't affect the case, right? So only information which actually could undermine the case, which is the information that they have to disclose, that's the information they're not disclosing. Like with this Stop ULEZ thing and Noel Wilcox with his Bedfordshire County Court case, where all these les fines are illegal because of illegal road signage, right? That's a lawful excuse why people might want to damage the cameras, right? But yet, the CPS don't want to disclose it. Why? Because it undermines their case, but that's the whole point why they've got to disclose something which undermines their case, because it undermines the case, right? But that's the only thing that they don't want to disclose, and they're not going to. So they're breaking their pledge. Because it's getting, playing the right note that you're meant to play, right? When you've got all this attention on, gives this strange feedback effect, this noise, even though it's a perfectly okay song, right? And this is one of the peculiar effects of all this media. And now they've got everyone to have a mobile. They forced everyone to have a mobile phone. They forced everyone to film themselves doing anything. And then you've got, there's nothing more stupid and ridiculous, right, than seeing these, when everyone's holding their phone and filming 100 people. Then you got a police officer walking around, right, with a pole, filming everyone with a camera. It's like everyone's already filming everything. It's like some kind of porn film that's being made, or weird thing. It's almost kind of like the bishop with the cross. It's like, it's bad enough that every single person's filming what's going on, right? And the police are already confiscating funds, but then the police are filming it as well. Right? What is this obsession with filming? That there's, with this digital ID and these phones and this facial recognition and this whole forcing kids to vote when they haven't even finished school, right? They're not even ready to teach a class properly yet, but they're wanting them to go out and vote. They haven't even finished puberty. Hardly some of them, how can you vote on now? There is an argument that, kids know what kids want and what kids need, but politics isn't about politics. You might as well say a baby knows what a baby wants and what a baby needs when it cries, or when it, this is the thing. Adults have an interest and a complete and fuller awareness of politics is about the world. It's about running the whole country, and it's about its place in the country and the world. It's not about all these other things like social interactions. And, most of the children's life isn't governed because most of the children aren't accountable to the law until they're a certain age, right? Okay, the schools are governed, right? But this is the thing, I think kids have got a lot to focus on, enjoying themselves with the kids, doing things that kids do, growing, learning. And then when you finish, then, you can make some decisions and vote. I really think that the government are pressing ahead with this, with making them have the phone, which is a digital ID, then calling it the digital ID, and then having everyone scanned and filmed or whatever, and then saying, oh, well, now because it's the digital ID, then the government can have access to it so they can follow everyone around the GPS, right? This is the thing. We've already been under the influence from adverts which haven't even been made illegal when they're getting people to buy unhealthy food still and unhealthy habits and all these other things, right? It's just rushing into things. And I think, right, that the government are going to be surprised. I don't think they're fully prepared for the effects of what's happened when everyone gets a camera and can film live, and when everyone in the planet is doing it, they're getting this thing now. I mean, every single prime ministers aren't lasting 12 months now hardly, because they're taking all the flack from the whole party. I don't think that there's at the moment, you can't have a prime minister because the whole party is doing things that at least half the country doesn't like or want, right? And it's so difficult to target all of the MPs because there's too many people to aim at, so it all gets aimed at the leader, right? The prime minister. And then you've got, David Cameron, then you've got, Theresa May, Boris Johnson, Rishi Sunak, Liz Truss. These prime ministers aren't lasting 2 seconds now because they're taking all of the... I don't think that you can have a stable prime minister now. It's not possible. They're pissing that many people off that people aren't just standing for it. So until they stop annoying half the country, we're not going to have a permanent prime minister in this country for any length of time because they're annoying too many people, right? Unless they want to be like Putin and be a dictator, right? It's not going to happen. So we're not going to have any prime ministers permanent. I don't think we're going to have one ever again. Now, I think this is the end of the prime minister. And remember, we didn't even have prime ministers for a long time. There wasn't even such thing as a prime minister. We didn't even have one. We had attorney general and a speaker, right? And we went for hundreds of years without even having a prime minister, right? So that prime minister, it's like he's a little new kid on the block, right? And he's not going to be a new kid on the block for long because he's pissing everyone off. Every prime minister is pissing everyone off now, and their parties. And I think that it's enough of this. Football team model, this kind of like Manchester United versus, Arsenal or whatever, put this, it's, colours and shirts are for sports, sports and athletics, not for how the country should be run, you should be choosing a person who you think is responsible, honest, intelligent, and, able to represent an area and its people, and who wants to engage and respond and represent those people or whatever majority of those people want to do at any given time, right? That's what it's about. And all this kind of manifestos of these groups, these underground parties, organisations, the World Economic Forum, the Fabians, Tony Blair, all these groups, all these organisations that are actually... Why have an organisation, right, if the organisation is putting out the law, right? But the electors are going to decide what the law should be and what they want, not an organisation. So what's the point in having the organisation? Because at the end of the day, that means that an organisation is getting people to do what an organisation wants and agree with it. That means that the organisation's running the country. But that means that the people aren't running the country. And this is a problem with Tony Blair and his digital ID and his Fabians and his G40 cities, and his World Health Organisation. It's the World Health Organisation. It's not the people of England, right? The Fabians are the Fabians. They're not the people of England. The World Health Organisation is the World Health Organisation, isn't the people of England, right? It's about time we had a party called the people of England, right? And then they vote for what they wanted, not like, the Labour Party, How about having the people of England, all of the people of England? That's diversity and inclusion, and not, the people of England and, half of, the territories and world, which is what they're wanting to do under the guidance of some kind of Nigel Farage guru, who's broken every election law under the sun. I don't think there's an election law that Farage hasn't broken if you actually properly went through all of the... if you went through all of his accounts. I wouldn't be surprised if Farage hasn't broke every single law in the Representation of the People Act if you properly looked at it, right? I wouldn't be surprised if he hasn't broken every single one of those laws. Never mind presenting the candidate to the public, or using entertainment to your advantage in return for favours, and so forth. It's they want to be famous. These people are out for celebrity, being a celebrity, and encouraging kids to. YouTube now is encouraging people to be celebrities and want to have fans and followers and worshippers. Surely that can't be healthy for children. Since when in the history of this planet has it been good to have worshippers and followers and gurus? I mean, okay, they say be like Jesus, but they're wanting to get rid of Christianity. It's like they're wanting people to want that. Right? It's not normal. You can't reply to 1,000 people every day and have a life at every single comment or give them all your attention. It's a one-way thing. It's like, throw loads of comments at me that I'm probably not ever going to read or get my AI to summarize them, but, I can't walk around like Michael Jackson and give you all autographs. Why not encourage healthy relationships? The whole thing is going completely and totally ridiculous now, and the MPs have allowed these tech companies to rush ahead. Like Nick Clegg said, oh no, we can't keep up with them. No, you let them do that because you wanted them to entrap us with these digital ID card phones, which Tony Blair had been planning, so we've all got them now. Get all the data on there, and then pull this digital ID. Oh, but by the way, it's a digital ID card. Consent, submit, accept. Sign there, finished, right? Now it is a digital ID card. I never knew. I thought it was just a phone to call people on. This is a thing. And this ridiculous diversity and inclusion where maybe the Prime Minister should be disabled, and, that would be fair to have a Prime Minister with a disability. Maybe one who couldn't think, Hey, I've got an idea for diversity and inclusion. Why don't we have a Prime Minister who's in a coma? Right? That would be great, wouldn't it? Hey, this is the Prime Minister, but he's in a coma. But it's diversity and that's diversity and inclusion. I bet Ed Davey would love that. Yeah, I'm Ed Davey. I am the champion of disabilities and the elderly. Ed Davey, the flagship of disabled charity trusts and inclusion. Hey, let's have someone who's in a coma as the Prime Minister. That's diversity and inclusion. It goes to a point, right, where, it's like if you have, how is that standards? No, it's standards. It's standards. This is our new standards. Petitioners Committee standards. No, it's not standards. It's not diversity and inclusion. It's exclusion, right? It's excluding people and claiming that it's inclusion, right? Which is what the main political parties are doing. So, there are lots of issues with this digital ID, and bringing the teenagers into the equation prematurely is not the solution. I don't think that is a solution. I'm definitely not fining them for not registering or whatever. It's bad enough getting, passing your driving test and then, just going out on a perfectly normal day with nothing happens. There is no occurrence, right? Nothing out of the ordinary or peculiar, nothing happens. It's a perfectly normal day. There is nothing goes wrong, right? I got a letter through. Who from? His Majesty's Police. Now you're at the right age. Now you got to learn discipline. You haven't done anything wrong. Well, you still learn discipline anyway, right? I got up, I went to school, I came home, did my homework, I had my tea, I went to sleep, then I got up, then I got a letter through saying, you're going to be fined by His Majesty. But I haven't done anything. Exactly. Learn discipline early in life, right? You're being fined because you didn't register to vote. And by the way, if you don't vote for Starmer, then we're going to fine you double, Or vote for Gary Barlow. By the way, we sent you the Gary Barlow poster. Put it up on the wall next to Nigel Farage. I'd quite be surprised if the government don't start sending out pictures of Baroness M on a yacht. We're sending posters out of Baroness M on a yacht. People have been putting them on a wall, and then she'll be next thing she'll be popping up leading the Senate or something. There's all the cheeky girls, Boris Johnson and the cheeky girls. I'm even quite surprised that the Conservative Party, after they'd done that Ed Miliband stunt with the Alex Salmond advert, God rest his soul, I'm quite surprised the Conservatives didn't think that was a good idea. When Boris Johnson was running his highly popular entertainment column in the newspapers while he was still running for Prime Minister and was familiarising himself being presented to the public as a entertainer, provider of entertainment, is that against the election law? This is the thing, right? Quite surprised they didn't send out posters of Boris Johnson and the cheeky girls. Put them up on your wall. If that doesn't win an election, what will? This is the thing, you might as well have Gary Barlow in Parliament. And then they can send out take that posters, take it or leave it, and if you leave it, we'll fine you. This is the thing. This is all part of the digital ID card plan, the smartphone, having all of the data control, GPS, central government surveillance and control. I ain't voting for it. I'm not voting for it. We need referendums on these things. We need referendums on the kids voting. We need referendums on digital ID cards. We need referendum on all these very big, important issues, because the time of prime ministers has come to an end. Prime ministers cannot survive when they are creating chaos around the country. And that's what they're doing. They're creating chaos around this country, imposing all this tech, which no one has a decision or choice in, right? And now they're targeting the children because they can't win an election with the adults. Now they got to bring the children into it. It's like, if you put in a car through a production line, right? This is what Starmer wants to do, right? We're putting a kid through school, right? Put a child through school on a conveyor belt, right? And teach the child, and then when the child comes out as a complete person at the other side, right? Then they can go vote, right? Which is, I suppose, what they're trying to make out with 16-year-olds, right? But it's like putting a car through. You don't put a car on the road until it's finished coming out of the production line and it's got all its wheels on it and it's been finished, right? This is the thing. I don't think that 16 is, the kids, you can't even drive. You can't even drive when you're 16. I think it's 17 you've got to be before you drive. And then you can't even drink alcohol, supposedly. And I don't even know what it is now because I've been going on that many websites in America where it's 21, You would have actually thought they'd have put the age up for alcohol to 21 and they would have actually had the voting the same, and gone the other way with it. I don't like it anyway. There's something not right about it, because these tech companies are now the political parties and MPs are not the major influencers now. The law's not the major influencer. Mark Zuckerberg has had more influence on this country, getting people to the attitude where you shouldn't talk. If you're with a group of people in a tennis club, you shouldn't talk about anything but tennis, right? You shouldn't talk about, what we're going to do tonight later on, or you shouldn't talk about going on holiday, right? If you're in a cricket club, you talk about cricket, right? Or you're not going to be in the cricket club anymore, right? This is the thing, block ban. The sweeping effect of the whole nation that Mark Zuckerberg has caused by inventing Facebook, and by the way, he didn't succeed by himself. The BBC announced to the nation that there was this cool thing called Facebook, right, and everyone should go on it, right, and then they did, and that's how I found out about it, through Radio 2, and if they hadn't have made that announcement, I wouldn't have even known it existed. So basically the government said, hey, Mark Zuckerberg, he's got this cool thing, and Tony Blair went, hey, yeah, we could take over the world with that. Get the BBC to announce it. Hey, Facebook exists. Boom! Hey, I'm Mark Zuckerberg. I was just a spotty, geeky college kid with a computer program sat at a desk. Now I'm emperor of the world. I've got Sonic Clegg, he's the global president, and now I've been spamming everyone with all my naff adverts, which no one wants to see or hear, right, around the whole world, which waste people's time and cause, infuriate people. If it wasn't for the BBC, no one even would have joined that website, right? Or even known about it. So, how much money does Mark Zuckerberg go to the BBC for that free plug? This is the thing. So it's almost like, I'm not knocking Oasis because they're a good band, but it's almost like, Oasis happened to win 3 or 4 awards, and then, look, he's Tony Blair. Hey, I wouldn't have done this without Tony Blair. He's my hero. You go and shake his hand, Oh, that's a little free advert for the Prime Minister for into a music festival. Does that help him in the next election? This is the thing, Tony Blair, the mastermind, the Fabian mastermind of mankind. It's like, I don't think that, even did the Aboriginal people in Australia have such as bad stroke of luck as a couple of boats turning up? Oh, look, Australia, we'll have that, whether you like it or not. Are we here now? Well, actually, no, this is our continent, go away. Well, unfortunately, we're a lot more advanced than you with a lot more technology, and, that's tough. That's just an inevitable. It's the fate of the Australian continent. Oh, there you are. Oh, too bad we found you now. And it's like, look, everyone's got a mobile phone with all their information about themselves on it. Oh, there you are. We found you all now. Too bad. Now we're taking over the whole planet because that's your new digital identity we've got chained to you. And if you don't carry it around everywhere, you won't even be able to go on your normal desktop computer at home unless you have your mobile phone with you to receive the text message code which comes through. So unfortunately now you cannot leave home without the mobile phone or go on anywhere without it. We might as well already implant it into you, in the womb. We might as well have new chips that we implant into people when they're in the womb, let alone choosing, whether you want a girl or a boy. This is the thing. These people, right, Tony Blair, they are not people who are sane. He's not a sane human being. Tony Blair is an insane megalomaniac because his pursuit and objective is to world domination using technology, whether people like it or not, just because he can and because his tech circles and pals now have got superior weaponry, technology and forces, just like the Romans with their shields and army, and just like the boats rocking up on the beaches of Australia. We are being infiltrated by a menacing force which is doing what it will to us, whether we like it or not. And this is the problem. And apparently we can't even have a referendum in it. So I do not support this digital ID at all whatsoever.